one more time someone comes to me and is like, oh, एक homemaker के 10 हाथ होते हैं, I will combust genuinely. किसके होते हैं 10 हाथ? If someone had 10 hands, I feel like at some point someone in the world would have noticed. Okay, and this is purely the crux of why this film just doesn't take off. Hi, I am Pratiksha and you're listening to my review of Mrs. Undercover. Now, the title is very smart. You know, when you hear Mrs. Undercover, you're like, oh, very interesting premise. Premise ही interesting है. But after a point, you're just like, why? Why would you take such an interesting plot and just drive it nowhere? The good thing is, we'll start with the good thing. Radhika Apte as the lead. She plays a homemaker who used to be a secret agent, but her organization essentially abandoned her for reasons. And now she's stuck in this hopeless and frankly a little abusive marriage. Now, as Durga, Radhika Apte is amazing. मतलब उनकी comedic timing is so good. When she has to be funny, she's funny. हर scene में where you know कि वो comedy try कर रही हैं, you will laugh. And there are scenes where she's crying and it hurts. It's very sad. Radhika Apte is a great actor. मतलब उनकी फिल्में one after the other, her performances are almost always great. जैसे कि Monica Oh My Darling में उनका role was mostly serious and comedy and she was playing that cop, right? And it was so funny. Like her part in the scene so hilarious, and that is why in Mrs. Undercover 2 she does a pretty good job of keeping her role intact. Now Durga is married to Dev, played by Sahib Chatterjee. He's played the role pretty well. मतलब उनको देख के गुस्सा आता है उनकी हरकतों की वजह से, and I guess that's his role, so that's a pretty good act. The rest of the cast also does a pretty good job. जो film है उसका premise is that there is, say, Durga, this homemaker, you know, this मामूली homemaker, who is tasked with the fact that उसको एक serial killer को ढूंढना है जिसका नाम is common man. Pretty apt. ऐसा कोई messaging अपनी film छुपाने की कोशिश नहीं कर रही है. It's pretty clear what they're trying to say. Film में they're essentially saying कि oh, this is world everywhere, the world around us is just patriarchal and it's the common man that, you know, perpetuates this patriarchy. और वो messaging काफी clear है. Fine, there is no subtext. I'm fine with it. Sometimes people lose out on subtext. You know, it's like ऐसे subtext आते हुए just. It's fine. A topic like this, it's fine to not have very high subtext. And I love silly, goofy cinema. You know, like in any genre, especially like horror thrillers and comedies, it's very malleable. मतलब उसमें आप कुछ भी कर सकते हो. There's such a vast scope कि आप स्टोरी को कहाँ तक लेके जा सकते हो. बट इन दिस द स्टोरी डजंट गो वेरी फॉरवर्ड. मतलब बहुत सारे लूप होल्स हैं. जैसे कि इफ इट्स सच अ इंटेंस मिशन, तो मतलब ऐसे कैलकाटा के स्ट्रीट्स पे क्यों डिस्कस हो रहे हैं मिशन के डिटेल्स, स्पेशली सिंस योर एनिमी इज द कॉमन मैन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, जो कोई भी हो सकता है, राइट? व्हाई वुड यू जस्ट येल डिटेल्स अबाउट योर मिशन वॉकिंग अराउंड? नाउ द इशू इज you can't help but compare it to Kahani, especially because it's a female protagonist, right? It's someone who you probably wouldn't think is a cold-blooded killer or a special agent or out for revenge, and that's also true for Vidya Balan's character in Kahani. But उसमें the writing was smart, right? और इसमें writing उतनी smart नहीं लगती है, especially क्योंकि the word housewife is just thrown into every sentence, almost जैसे कि filmmakers को भरोसा नहीं है कि आपको point समझ में आएगा. Now that's the issue, because the film का premise is so good. There's मतलब so much potential for satire, so much potential for commentary, but ये potential कहीं पे छुप के खत्म हो जाती है. Another main issue is the camera work for the action sequences. The DOP for Mrs. Undercover is Abhimanyu Sengupta, जिनका काम in the general scenes is pretty good. मतलब कैलकाटा की गलियाँ, he explores very well with the camera. It's beautiful to see the city like this. पर जब action sequences में shift होता है ना, then the camera is just moving. It's just moving here and there. It's moving more than it's capturing, and that's not great for an action sequence. Another actor who does deserve mention is Sumit Vyas, who plays common man as such. He's the main antagonist. Very well done. You know, and I love the idea of casting someone who comes off as a boy next door types but is essentially a serial killer. Because we have this idea that a villain is supposed to look villainous, which is not true, especially in a plot like this film. And that works very well for the film. Film का plus point also ये है कि it is engaging, right? Because उनका जो pacing है is pretty good. So that's great. But the issue again is, for example, okay, it's a thriller, but I know who's doing it, right? I know the antagonist. Mask पहना दो उसको एक, at least till the climax scene. You know, that in itself, just उतना mystery would have done wonders for the film. So that's the thing, the script writing is the main issue. It's just not as smart as you would want a thriller to be. And that is the big bad of this film if you think about it. It is also a pity क्योंकि ये फिल्म ऐसा है विच इज़ ट्राइंग टू मेक फेमिनिस्ट कॉमेंट्री, मतलब वो कहना चाहते हैं जो मैसेजिंग है सही, बट दे डोंट डू इट इन द राइट वे। क्योंकि वही हो जाता है ना फिर कि औरत के 10 हाथ होते हैं, शी इज़ अ स्पाई, शी इज़ अ होम मेकर, मामूली होम मेकर कुछ भी कर सकती है। इट ग्लोरिफाइज दिस काइंड ऑफ आइडिया दैट ओ women have these 10 hands, is why they can do all this manual labor for free essentially, but that's not true. Just help. It's not that complicated. Just help them because they clearly don't have 10 hands. And वही problem है कि just because they do it does not mean that they should be doing it. So that kind of glorification is just not fun to see in a film like this. Other than that, what thoughts do I have? Radhika Apte की वजह से this film does manage to be a good one-time watch, right? क्योंकि एक बार देख के आपको अच्छा लगेगा, मजा आएगा, गुड इनफ, बट आफ्टर दैट यू कैन स्टार्ट सीइंग द लूप होल्स इन इट एंड अपनी ही मैसेजिंग पे वो नहीं खरे उतर पाती, एंड दैट्स द प्रॉब्लम. राधिका आप्टे इज ट्राइंग हर बेस्ट लाइक दुर्गा. शी इज लिटरली फाइटिंग फॉर हर लाइफ to make this film rise higher than its own merit, and for most part it works, and that is why my rating for Mrs. Undercover is 2.5 stars out of 5.